The crystalline trees of Theros Prime caught the light of 3 distant suns and scattered it across the forest floor in patterns of blue and violet. Jiho walked carefully through the dense undergrowth, his scanner beeping softly as it recorded new plant species. He had been stationed at the research outpost for 2 years now, far from the crowded human colonies, far from the memories that haunted him. He preferred it this way, alone. The roar shattered that peace like breaking glass. Jiho froze, his hand instinctively moving to the small plasma pistol at his hip. The sound came again, deeper this time, filled with pain and rage. It echoed through the crystal trees, making them vibrate with a musical hum. Every instinct told him to run back to the outpost, to call for help, to stay away from whatever creature could make such a terrible sound. But Jiho had been a medic before he became a researcher. Some instincts ran deeper than fear. He moved toward the sound, pushing through the glowing ferns and around massive tree trunks that grew like twisted towers. The roaring grew louder, and beneath it, he heard something else. A smaller sound, a whimper of pain that made his heart clench. Jiho emerged into a clearing and stopped breathing. The creature before him was massive. 50 feet of bronze-scaled muscle and wings, with horns that curved back from a head the size of a transport vehicle. Its eyes glowed with an inner fire, and smoke curled from its nostrils. A dragon. An actual, living dragon. Jiho had heard rumors that such creatures existed on the frontier worlds, but seeing one was different. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. The dragon was crouched protectively over something smaller. Its wings were spread wide, sheltering whatever lay beneath from Jiho's view. It saw him and roared again, flames licking between its teeth. "Easy," Jiho said softly, raising his hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you. We're go." The dragon's eyes narrowed. It was intelligent. Jiho could see that clearly in the way it watched him, calculating, deciding if he was a threat. Then the smaller sound came again, and the dragon shifted slightly. Jiho caught a glimpse of what it was protecting. A young dragon, smaller than a ground vehicle, with scales that shimmered silver in the strange light. It lay on its side, and even from this distance, Jiho could see the terrible burn that crossed its body. The flesh was blackened and weeping, and the little dragon's breathing came in short, painful gasps. "Oh no," Jiho whispered. He looked at the mother dragon and saw something he recognized in her glowing eyes. Desperation. He had seen it before, in the faces of parents who brought their children to him too late, when there was nothing he could do. That same, terrible helplessness, but this time was different. This time, he might be able to help. Jiho slowly unslung his medical pack from his shoulder. The mother dragon tensed, flames building in her throat. He moved very carefully, opening the pack to show her the contents. Bandages, medical tools, healing gel. He pointed to the injured child, then to his supplies, then made a gesture of bandaging. The dragon watched him. Seconds stretched like hours. The little dragon whimpered again, and Jiho saw her trying to lift her head toward her mother. The movement was weak, dying. "Please," Jiho said quietly. "Let me try." The young dragon's voice was soft, melodic despite her pain. She made a sound that was almost like singing, though the notes were broken. The mother dragon's head snapped down toward her child, listening. Jiho didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning when the mother dragon looked back at him. The little one had said something. Something important. The mother dragon slowly folded her wings and stepped aside, though she kept her massive body between Jiho and escape. Her message was clear. He could help, but if he tried to hurt her child, she would kill him before he took 2 steps. Jiho nodded understanding and moved forward. Up close, the injury was worse than he thought. Some kind of energy weapon had burned through the young dragon's scales and deep into the muscle beneath. The wound was infected, and the smell of dying tissue made Jiho's stomach turn. Without treatment, the child would be dead within hours. "I'm going to help you," he said softly to the little dragon. Her eyes opened, large and golden, filled with pain but also something else. Trust. She had somehow convinced her mother to trust him. Jiho worked quickly. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic, wincing as the young dragon cried out. The mother growled, a sound that vibrated through the ground. But she didn't stop him. He applied synthetic skin to protect the burned area and injected broad-spectrum antibiotics adapted for non-human biology. His hands moved with practiced skill, falling into old patterns he thought he had left behind. As he worked, he talked. It didn't matter that the dragons probably couldn't understand his words. The tone mattered. The calmness mattered. I worked in a colony medical center once, he said, applying healing gel to the edges of the wound. Before I came here, there was an accident. An atmospheric processor failed. I couldn't save them. Couldn't save any of them. The little dragon's breathing was easier now. The antibiotics were working fast. That's why I'm here. On this empty planet, studying plants. Because plants don't die when you fail them. He secured the bandage carefully. But you're not going to die. I won't let you. He stepped back and looked at the mother dragon. She immediately moved to her child, gently nuzzling her with the side of her massive head. The little dragon made a soft trilling sound, almost like a purr. Then Jiho saw something that made his blood run cold. Behind the dragons, burned into the trees, were scorch marks from energy weapons. And in the dirt, he saw tracks. Not dragon tracks. Something else. Something that walked on two legs and wore boots. You're being hunted, he said. The mother dragon looked at him. And suddenly his mind filled with images. Not words, but pictures and feelings. He saw a village of dragons, peaceful and beautiful. He saw ships descending from the sky. He saw fire and screams and dragons falling. He saw hunters with energy nets and weapons, herding the survivors into cages. He saw the little dragon's father standing against the hunters, buying time for his mate and child to escape. He saw him fall. The images faded, and Jiho staggered, his head spinning. Telepathy. The dragon had shared her memories with him. They're coming for you, he said. The hunters are still tracking you. The mother dragon nodded slowly. She understood his words somehow, or perhaps his meaning. The little dragon was trying to stand now, wobbling on unsteady legs. She looked at Jiho and sang a few soft notes. Then she moved toward him, slowly, and pressed her nose against his hand. It was warm, like touching sun-heated metal. Mama. He's kind, the little dragon had whispered to her mother. Can we trust this human? Jiho didn't know how he understood those words, but he did. Perhaps the mother's telepathy had created a bridge. Perhaps some things transcended language. He looked at the mother dragon, at this massive being who had chosen to trust him with her dying child. Come with me, he said. My outpost has better medical equipment. I can help her heal properly. And maybe we can figure out how to keep you safe from the hunters. The mother dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then she lowered her head in what could only be agreement. Jiho had come to this planet to hide from his failures. But as he led two dragons through the crystal forest toward his outpost, he realized something. Sometimes running away wasn't the answer. Sometimes the only way to heal was to try again, to save someone, even if that someone had scales and wings and came from the stars. Behind them, in the distance, engines roared. The hunters were coming, but Jiho had made his choice. He would not fail again. Not this time. 3 days had passed since Jiho brought the dragons to his research outpost. 3 days of chaos, wonder, and growing friendship. Jiho had nearly fainted when he saw the massive bronze dragon approaching the outpost. He had locked himself in the storage room and refused to come out until Jiho convinced him through the door that the dragons were peaceful. Even then, Jiho had watched them from behind reinforced windows, his hands shaking whenever the mother dragon moved. Now, Jiho sat in the common room, eating his breakfast while the young dragon, Hana, watched him with curious golden eyes through the open airlock. She had learned that humans needed to eat regularly, and she found it fascinating. "She's staring at me again," Daeho said, not looking up from his food. "She's curious," Jiho replied, checking the medical readouts on his tablet. "Hana's vital signs are improving. The infection is gone, and the tissue is regenerating." Hana. That was what Jiho had named the young dragon. After he realized he couldn't keep calling her the little one. The mother dragon had seemed to approve, making a sound that almost seemed like she was trying to say the name. The mother dragon, Seraphine, was too large to fit inside the outpost. She had made herself comfortable in the clearing outside, where she could see both her daughter and the sky. She never truly slept. One eye was always open, always watching. "Mira, status report on the sector scans," Jiho said to the air. The station's AI responded with her usual dry tone. "Still nothing but merchant traffic and a few mining drones. Though I must say, Jiho, your research notes have become much more interesting lately. Who knew xenobiology could be this dramatic?" Daeho snorted. "Dramatic is one word for it. Terrifying is another." "They're not terrifying," Jiho said. "They're magnificent." As if understanding his words, Hana made a musical trilling sound. She had been learning to communicate with them, picking up on their emotional states and simple concepts. Her silver scales caught the morning light, making her shimmer like a living jewel. Jiho walked to the airlock and stepped outside. Seraphine lifted her massive head, watching him approach. Over the past 3 days, they had developed a routine. Each morning, Jiho would come to check on her, bringing her food when he could, and simply sitting with her when he couldn't. The telepathic connection between them had grown stronger. At first, it had been just flashes of images and feelings. Now Jiho could almost understand her thoughts, though they came in ways different from human thinking. He sat on a smooth rock near her head, and she lowered her neck to bring her face closer to his level. This close, Jiho could see the intelligence in her ancient eyes, the wisdom and sorrow of her kind. "How old are you?" he asked softly. Images filled his mind. Centuries. Many, many human lifetimes. Seraphine had seen stars, born and die. She had watched worlds change. She had raised children before Hana, seen them grow and have children of their own. "And now your people are almost gone," Jiho said. The sadness that flowed from her was overwhelming. Jiho saw more memories. He saw the Thraxian people as they had been, hundreds of dragons living in harmony on a beautiful world with violet skies. They had been peaceful, using their long lives to create art and music, to study the universe, to raise their young with care. Then, the Krothic Dominion had discovered them. The images turned dark. The Krothic were hunters, but not for food or survival. They hunted for profit. Dragon scales could be made into armor that was nearly indestructible. Dragon organs had properties that the wealthy would pay fortunes for, believing they could extend life or grant power. The Krothic had swept through the Thraxian worlds like a plague, capturing some dragons alive for breeding stock, killing the rest. Seraphine had fled with Hana and her mate. They had run for months, jumping from world to world, always hunted. Finally, on a nameless moon, the hunters had caught up. Her mate had fought them, had given everything to let Seraphine and Hana escape to Tharos Prime. "I'm sorry," Jiho whispered. "I'm so sorry." Seraphine nuzzled him gently with the side of her head, a gesture of comfort despite her being the one who had suffered the loss. Then she projected a question to him, accompanied by the feeling of curiosity. She wanted to know his story. Jiho leaned back against the warm scales of her neck and looked at the sky. He had not talked about it in 2 years. Not to Daeho, not to anyone. But Seraphine had shared her pain with him. It seemed only fair to share his own. "I was the head medic at Colony 7, he began. "It was a good job. Important. We had 5,000 people living there. trying to make a new home on a planet that didn't want us. He closed his eyes, remembering. The atmospheric processors were new technology. They were supposed to be safe. But there was a flaw in the design, something no one caught. One of them failed catastrophically. It released toxic gas across half the colony. The memory was still sharp, still painful. I tried to save them. We all did. But there were too many. Too many sick, too many dying. I worked for 3 days straight, and I watched hundreds of people die. Seraphine rumbled softly, a sound of understanding. 237 people died, Jiho continued. And I couldn't save them. I was the head medic, and I failed. So I came here, to a research station where nothing ever happens. Where I study plants that can't die on me. Where I can't fail anyone else. The flow of emotion from Seraphine was complex. Sympathy, yes, but also something else. A gentle correction. She sent him images again. She showed him Hana, weak and dying in the forest. Then she showed him Hana now, healing and playful and alive. That's different, Jiho protested. Seraphine's response was firm. She showed him her mate fighting the hunters, dying so his family could live. She showed him the choice he had made. Then, she showed Jiho in the clearing, making his choice to help despite the danger. You're saying it doesn't matter that I failed before? Jiho asked. That what matters is trying? The feeling of affirmation was strong. Inside the outpost, alarms began to blare. Jiho jumped to his feet, running toward the building. Daeho met him at the door, his face pale. Ships, Daeho said. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Military configurations. 2. Who? Jiho demanded, though he already knew. Mira's voice came through the speakers, and for once, she sounded worried. Krathic Dominion hunter vessels. 3 ships. They're scanning the planet. They're looking for something. Jiho looked back at Seraphine. She was standing now, her wings half spread, placing herself between the sky and her daughter. She had known this moment would come. How long until they find us? Jiho asked. At their current scan rate, maybe 6 hours, Mira replied. Daeho grabbed Jiho's arm. We need to hide them. Or maybe we should tell the dragons to leave. If the Krathic find them here, they'll destroy the outpost. They'll kill us too. Jiho pulled his arm free and looked at Daeho. Would you run? If someone needed your help, would you abandon them to save yourself? That's different, Daeho said. These aren't people. They're intelligent beings with thoughts and feelings, Jiho interrupted. Hana is a child. Seraphine is a mother trying to protect her daughter. If we turn them away, we're no better than the hunters. Daeho was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. You're going to get us killed. With your conscience. Probably, Jiho agreed. But I've been dead inside for 2 years. Maybe this is better. Hana appeared in the airlock, her eyes wide with fear. She had sensed her mother's distress. She looked at Jiho and made a soft, questioning sound. Jiho went to her and placed his hand on her nose. It's okay, he said softly. I won't let them take you. I promise. Seraphine's telepathic voice filled his mind, clearer than it had ever been before. 3 words that somehow translated perfectly. Protect my child. With my life, Jiho replied. He turned to Daeho. Get on the emergency channel. Contact every human ship and station within range. Tell them we have refugees here, and the Krathic are coming. Tell them we need help. The nearest military ship is 3 weeks away, Daeho protested. Then we hold for 3 weeks, Jiho said. Mira, activate all defensive systems. Daeho, help me move Hana to the reinforced medical bay. If they want her, they'll have to come through us. Seraphine watched them work, and through their connection, Jiho felt her gratitude mixed with guilt. She had not wanted to bring danger to these humans. But Jiho sent back his own feelings. determination, protectiveness, and something else that surprised him: hope. For the first time in 2 years, Jiho felt like he had a purpose again. He was going to save someone. And this time, he would not fail. 6 days after Jiho first found the dragons, the hunters made their move. The Krathic ships had been orbiting Theros Prime for 3 days, scanning endlessly. They knew the dragons were here. They were being methodical, searching every square kilometer of the planet's surface. It was only a matter of time before they pinpointed the outpost. Jiho stood in the control room, watching the orbital display with tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in days. Neither had Daeho, who was currently running diagnostics on their defensive systems for the 10th time. Hannah was recovering well, strong enough now to move around the medical bay without pain. But she still couldn't fly long distances, and a chase across the planet would kill her. They had to stand their ground. "Incoming transmission," Mira announced. "Audio only. Krathic command frequency." Jiho straightened. "Put it through." The voice that filled the room was cold and mechanical, filtered through a translator. "Human Research Station. This is Commander Vrask of the Krathic Dominion Hunter Fleet. Our scans indicate you are harboring 2 Theraxian specimens. You will surrender them immediately. Specimens, not beings, not refugees." Jiho felt anger burn in his chest. "This is Jiho Park, director of this research facility," he replied. "The Theraxians you're referring to are sentient beings under my protection. They have requested sanctuary, which I have granted under colonial charter law." There was a pause. Then Vrask laughed, a harsh sound. "Sentient? They are animals, human. Valuable animals. But animals nonetheless. You have no authority to harbor Dominion property." "They're not property," Jiho said, his voice hard. "They're intelligent, self-aware beings with language and culture. The Galactic Accords are clear about hunting sentient species. The Accords recognize only species that meet specific criteria," Vrask replied. "The Theraxians have no written language, no technology, no civilization as defined by galactic law. They are not protected. Now, you will surrender them, or we will take them by force. Your outpost will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The transmission cut off. Daeho turned from his console, his face pale. "He's going to attack us. We have a research station's defenses, Jiho. We can't fight off 3 military ships." "I know," Jiho said quietly. He looked at the display showing Seraphine outside, her massive form coiled protectively around the outpost. "But we can try to hold until help arrives. Did any ships respond to our distress call?" "A few acknowledged receipt," Daeho said. "But like I said, the nearest military." "New contact," Mira interrupted. "Small vessel just dropped from hyperspace. Freelance registration. They're hailing us." "On screen," Jiho ordered. A woman's face appeared, middle-aged with sharp eyes and a scar across her left cheek. "This is Captain Somin of the merchant vessel, Second Chance. I picked up your distress signal. What's your situation?" Jiho quickly explained. As he spoke, Somin's expression grew more serious. "The Krathic are going to hit you hard," she said when he finished. "My ship has some weapons, but against 3 hunter vessels, I'm outgunned. Still, I didn't spend 30 years in space to let the Krathic murder refugees." She paused. "You understand you're asking humans to die for dragons?" "I understand I'm asking humans to do what's right," Jiho replied. Somin smiled grimly. "Good answer. I'll position myself in orbit and see if I can cause some trouble for those hunters. Second, Chance out." Daeho was staring at Jiho. "She's going to help us. A complete stranger is going to fight the Krathic for us." "For them," Jiho corrected, gesturing to where Hana stood in the medical bay, watching them through the window. "For beings who can't defend themselves." The attack came at dawn. Jiho was outside checking on Seraphine when the first energy blast hit the outpost's shields. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, and alarms began screaming from inside the building. "They're landing ground forces," Mira announced through the external speakers. "2 dropships. 20 Krothic troops plus. Oh no. They have a human with them." Jiho ran back inside and pulled up the external cameras. He could see the Krothic soldiers, insectoid creatures in armored suits, deploying around the outpost perimeter. And with them, dressed in mercenary gear, was a human man. "Traitor," Deho spat. The human mercenary activated a speaker. "My name is Jinseo. I'm here under contract to retrieve the Thoraxians. We can do this, easy or hard. Your choice." Jiho grabbed his own communicator. "This is Jiho. You're human. How can you work for them? You know what they're going to do to those dragons." There was a long pause. "I know what they pay," Jinseo finally said. "And I know that the galaxy doesn't care about extinct species. The Thoraxians are dying anyway. At least this way. I get paid. Not. I get paid." "That's not good enough," Jiho shot back. "You're better than this." "You don't know me." "I know you're human," Jiho said. "And humans are supposed to be better than this." Jinseo didn't respond. But he didn't order the attack either. Not yet. Seraphine moved to the front of the outpost, placing her massive body between the Krothic forces and the building where her daughter sheltered. She roared a challenge that shook the crystal trees. The Krothic opened fire. Energy bolts slammed into Seraphine's scales. Most bounced off, but some burned through. She roared in pain and rage, then unleashed her own weapon. The stream of fire that erupted from her mouth was white-hot, turning sand to glass and sending Krothic soldiers scrambling for cover. "They're trying to tire her out," Mira observed. "They know she can't fight forever." Inside the outpost, Jiho worked frantically to boost their shields. Deho was accessing the old defense systems, trying to find anything that could help. "I found something," Deho shouted. "Old colonial defense satellites. From when this was a frontier world. They're supposed to be deactivated. But, can you activate them?" Jiho demanded. "Maybe. I need access codes. Military-grade encryption. How long to crack it? Hours. Maybe days." They didn't have hours. Outside, Seraphine was faltering. She was still fighting, but Jiho could see her movements growing slower. The Krothic were using sonic weapons now. Sounds that hurt her sensitive hearing. She stumbled, and the Krothic pressed their advantage. Hana cried out from the medical bay, trying to reach her mother. Jiho ran to her, blocking her path. "No," he said firmly. "You're not strong enough. They'll capture you." Hana looked at him with desperate eyes and sang a series of notes he somehow understood. "My mother needs me." "Your mother needs you to be safe," Jiho replied. "That's why she's fighting." A massive explosion rocked the outpost. Part of the shield generator had failed. They were running out of time. Then, suddenly, the Krothic attack paused. Jiho pulled up the external view and saw Jinseo standing between his Krothic employers and the outpost. His weapon lowered. "I can't do this," they heard him say over the open channel. Commander Vrask's voice crackled through. "You are under contract, mercenary. Fight or be considered hostile." "Then I'm hostile," Jinseo replied. He turned and fired at the Krothic soldiers, taking down 3 before they could react. Chaos erupted. The Krothic turned on Jinseo, and he ducked behind cover, firing back. It wasn't much, but it bought them precious seconds. "Deho," Jiho shouted. "Those satellites." "I'm trying." In orbit, Samen's ship was harassing the Krothic vessels, darting in and out. Too small and fast to easily target but causing enough damage to keep them occupied. Seraphine collapsed to one knee, exhausted. The Krothic were preparing to rush the outpost when Deho screamed in triumph. "Got it. 1 satellite active." The old defense satellite, dormant for decades, came to life. It locked onto the nearest Krothic dropship and fired. The beam cut through the ship's hull like paper. The vessel exploded in a ball of flame. The remaining Krothic forces hesitated. That moment of hesitation saved them. "New contacts," Mira announced. "Multiple ships dropping from hyperspace. Colonial defense codes." Jiho pulled up the display and felt hope surge through him. 5 ships. Not a large force, but enough. At their head was a vessel broadcasting martial authority codes. A new voice came through the speakers, gruff and authoritative. "This is Colonial Marshal Kyung-ho. All vessels will stand down immediately. This planet is now under colonial jurisdiction." The Krothic ships began to withdraw. On the ground, the remaining soldiers retreated to their surviving dropship. But Commander Vrask had one last message. "This isn't over, human. The Thraxians are valuable. We will return. And next time, your colonial authority won't protect you." The Krothic ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving only the human vessels in orbit. Jiho ran outside to Seraphine. She was wounded and exhausted, but alive. Hana burst from the outpost and ran to her mother, nuzzling against her with desperate relief. Jinseo approached slowly, his hands raised. His armor was scorched, and he had a burn across his shoulder. "Why did you help us?" Jiho asked. Jinseo looked at the 2 dragons, mother and daughter reunited. "Because you were right," he said quietly. "I am better than this. Or at least, I should be." Marshal Kyung-ho's ship landed nearby, and the man himself stepped out, a stocky human with gray hair and stern features. He looked at the dragons, at the damaged outpost, at the small group of humans who had stood against superior forces. "You've created a diplomatic incident," he said to Jiho. "I saved lives," Jiho replied. Kyung-ho stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. Yes, you did. And now we need to figure out how to make it legal. Because if the Krothic come back, next time, it won't just be hunters. It'll be war." Jiho looked at Hana and Seraphine. "Then we make it legal. We get the Thraxians recognized as sentient. We give them protection under human law." "That's going to be complicated," Kyung-ho warned. "Good things usually are," Jiho said. Above them, Salmon's ship circled in orbit, standing guard. And for the first time since the hunters arrived, Jiho allowed himself to believe they might actually survive this. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. Jiho should have known it wouldn't last longer. Commander Vrask had made his intentions clear. The Krothic Dominion didn't forgive, and they didn't forget. More importantly, they didn't give up when there was profit to be made. Marshal Kyung-ho had stayed with them, his ship and crew working to fortify the outpost while the legal process began. He had sent messages to the Colonial Council, requesting emergency recognition of the Thraxians as a sentient species. But bureaucracy moved slowly, even in emergencies. The Krothic moved much faster. "Contact." Mira's voice cut through the morning calm. "Multiple hyperspace signatures. Heavy cruiser class. Krothic battle configuration." Jiho's blood turned to ice. He was in the medical bay, checking on Seraphine's healing wounds. She had recovered somewhat from the first battle, but she was far from full strength. "How many?" 7 ships. Kyung-ho's voice came through the communicator. He was in his own vessel, coordinating defenses. "They brought a full hunter fleet this time. They're not playing around." Seraphine lifted her head, sensing the danger. Through their telepathic link, Jiho felt her determination mixed with fear. Not fear for herself, but for Hana. "Mama." Hana's voice was small as she emerged from the shelter they had built for her. "Are they back?" Seraphine nuzzled her daughter gently, then looked at Jiho. The message was clear. Whatever happened, Hana had to survive. Outside, Kyung-ho's small fleet of 5 ships moved to intercept. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Salmon's merchant vessel took position near the outpost, ready to provide close support. Vrask's voice filled the communication channels. "Marshal Kyung-ho, You are interfering with legitimate Dominion hunting operations. Withdraw your forces, or we will consider this an act of war between the Krathic Dominion and the human colonies. The beings you're hunting are under my protection, Kyung-ho replied steadily. They have been granted temporary sanctuary, pending sentience evaluation. Under galactic law, you cannot. Galactic law is determined by power. Vrask interrupted. And we have more than enough power here. Last chance, Marshal. Withdraw. Kyung-ho looked at the tactical display. 7 Krathic warships against his 5 smaller vessels. The math was brutal. He could fight, and he would lose. His crew would die. The outpost would be destroyed. The dragons would be captured. Or, he could withdraw, save his people, and let the Krathic take what they came for. Jiho held his breath, waiting for the decision. All ships, Kyung-ho said slowly. Jiho felt a wave of gratitude and terror. Kyung-ho was willing to die for this. For dragons he had only just met. So be it, Vrask said. The Krathic fleet opened fire. Space lit up with energy weapons. Kyung-ho's ships scattered, using their smaller size and greater maneuverability to avoid the worst of the barrage. They fired back, their weapons scratching paint off the Krathic armor, but doing little real damage. On the ground, Krathic dropships screamed through the atmosphere. Dozens of them. They're coming for the outpost from all sides, Daeho reported, his voice tight with fear. We can't hold them all off. We don't have to hold them all off, Jiho said. We just have to hold them long enough. Long enough for what? Daeho demanded. The nearest reinforcements are weeks away. Jiho didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. He just knew. They had to try. Seraphine moved to the outpost entrance, placing herself as the first line of defense. Hana tried to follow, but Jiho stopped her. You need to hide, he said gently. Your mother is fighting to protect you. Don't waste that. I want to help her. Hana sang, her voice breaking with emotion. You will, Jiho promised. By surviving. That's what she needs from you. Reluctantly, Hana retreated to the reinforced shelter. Jiho sealed it behind her, then grabbed a plasma rifle from the weapons locker. Jinseo appeared at his side, his own weapons ready. Never thought I'd die defending dragons, the mercenary said. Never thought I'd die on a research station, Jiho replied. They moved to defensive positions as the first Krathic soldiers landed. The battle was chaos. Seraphine fought like a force of nature. Her flames turned Krathic soldiers to ash. Her claws tore through their armor like paper. But there were so many of them. They came in waves, and each wave brought new weapons designed specifically to bring down large creatures. Energy nets wrapped around Seraphine's wings, grounding her. Sonic weapons made her roar in pain. Still, she fought on, protecting the outpost with everything she had. Inside, Jiho, Daeho, and Jinseo held the corridors. The Krathic tried to breach the walls, and the humans fought them back. Jiho had been a medic, not a soldier, but fear and determination made him steady. Each shot he fired was another second they survived. Shield at 30%, Mira reported. Her voice remained calm. But Jiho knew the AI well enough to hear the concern underneath. In orbit, the battle was going no better. 2 of Kyung-ho's ships were already crippled, drifting dead in space. The remaining 3 were fighting desperately, but it was clear they couldn't last much longer. Then Jiho heard something that made his heart stop. A sound of breaking metal and a roar of pain. Seraphine. He looked at the external cameras and saw the dragon on the ground, wrapped in energy nets. Dozens of wounds bleeding across her bronze scales. The Krathic were preparing the capture equipment. No, Jiho whispered. He heard Hana screaming from her shelter, feeling her mother's pain through whatever connection dragons shared. The sound was heartbreaking. Jiho ran toward the exit. Jinseo grabbed his arm. You can't help her, the mercenary said. You'll just die. Then I'll die trying, Jiho replied, pulling free. He burst through the airlock and ran toward Seraphine. Plasma bolts flew past him. One grazed his leg, and he fell. Pain exploding through his body. He crawled forward anyway, dragging himself toward the fallen dragon. A Krothic soldier stood over him, weapon raised. Jiho closed his eyes, waiting for the end. The shot never came. There was a brilliant flash of light, and the Krothic soldier disintegrated. Jiho looked up and saw something impossible. Ships, dozens of ships dropping from hyperspace, human ships of every type, military vessels, yes, but also merchant ships, mining haulers, even a few civilian transports. They filled the space around Tharos Prime, and every single one of them had weapons charged. "This is Captain Salmon to all vessels," the trader's voice rang out across all frequencies. "I sent out a call 3 days ago. Told every human in this sector what was happening here. Told them the Krothic were trying to take refugees under our protection. Told them we needed help." More voices joined her. "This is the merchant fleet from Andara Station. We heard the call. Mining Guild, Sector 7. We're here. Civilian Defense Force Newterra, ready to engage." One by one, human ships declared themselves. They were a ragtag fleet, not military, just ordinary humans who had decided this was a line they wouldn't let the Krothic cross. Kyung-ho's voice was thick with emotion. "All human vessels. This is Colonial Marshal Kyung-ho. You are all out of your minds. You could start a war." "Then we start a war," someone replied. "But we're not letting them take the dragons." The Krothic fleet found themselves suddenly and dramatically outnumbered. Vrask's voice cut through the chaos, and for the first time, there was uncertainty in it. "This is madness. These are just animals. Why are you willing to die for them?" It was Jiho who answered, still lying on the ground next to Seraphine. "Because they're not animals. They're people. And humans protect people, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. That's what makes us human." Kyung-ho's voice joined his. "Commander Vrask, you are now facing a force of over 40 human vessels. Every single one of them is willing to fight. I am officially declaring the Thraxians a protected sentient species under human law. Any attempt to capture or harm them will be considered an act of war against humanity itself. Do you really want that war?" The silence stretched. Jiho pulled himself to Seraphine's side and pressed his hand against her scales. She was badly hurt, but alive. Her eye opened and looked at him, filled with gratitude and wonder. Finally, Vrask spoke. "You are making a mistake, humans. The Dominion will not forget this." "Neither will we," Kyung-ho replied. The Krothic fleet withdrew, leaving their ground forces to scramble back to their ships. Within minutes, they had jumped to hyperspace, retreating from the overwhelming human presence. Cheers erupted across the communication channels. Ships celebrated. Crews embraced. They had won. Against all odds. Jiho collapsed next to Seraphine, exhaustion and pain overwhelming him. Medical teams were already rushing from the ships, human and alien medics working together to treat the wounded. Daeho appeared at his side, tears streaming down his face. "We did it! We actually did it!" The shelter opened, and Hana emerged. She ran to her mother, crying and singing at the same time. Seraphine, despite her wounds, wrapped a wing around her daughter and held her close. Through the telepathic link, Jiho felt Seraphine's emotions. Gratitude. Yes, but also something deeper. She had seen something today that she had thought lost in the galaxy. She had seen beings of one species risk everything to protect beings of another, simply because it was right. Kyung-ho landed and walked over to where Jiho lay. The marshal looked at the wounded human and the wounded dragons, at the destroyed outpost and the celebrating ships above. "You started something today," he said quietly. "Something big. The Council is going to have to recognize the Thraxians now. And other species will see what we did here. They'll ask for human protection too." "Tractor, Ector, is that a bad thing?" Jiho asked. Kyung-ho smiled. "No, I don't think it is. though it's going to make my job a lot more complicated. Salmon's voice came through the communicators. Jiho, you still alive down there? Barely, he replied. Good. Because I'm organizing a supply run to help rebuild your outpost. And I know about 15 other captains who want to meet the dragons they risked their lives for. Jiho looked at Hana, who was looking back at him with her golden eyes, and at Seraphine, who was watching all the human ships with something like awe. They're going to want to thank you, he said to the dragons. Seraphine sent him an image. Dozens of humans, all different types, all standing together to protect her and her daughter. And underneath it, a feeling of hope. Maybe, her thoughts whispered to him, maybe her species had a future after all, thanks to humans who refused to look away from suffering, even when the suffering wasn't their own. 3 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. Jiho stood at the edge of what was now called the Thraxian Sanctuary, watching the morning suns rise over Theros Prime. The crystalline trees caught the light and scattered it in familiar patterns of blue and violet. But everything else had changed. Where once there had been only his small research outpost, now there was a growing settlement. Prefabricated buildings dotted the landscape, housing researchers, volunteers, and support staff. Medical facilities for treating injured Thraxians, communication arrays for coordinating with the broader galaxy, and everywhere, signs of hope. The sound of wings made Jiho turn. Hana descended from the sky, her silver scales gleaming in the sunlight. She had fully healed, grown stronger, and learned to fly with the grace her kind was known for. She landed near Jiho with barely a sound, having learned to be gentle around humans. Good morning, Jiho said, smiling. Hana trilled a response, then nuzzled his shoulder affectionately. Over the months, they had developed their own language, a mix of human words, dragon songs, and shared emotions through the telepathic bond that had grown between them. Seraphine appeared from the sanctuary's main area, moving with her usual majesty, despite the scars she now bore from the battle. Behind her came something that still filled Jiho with wonder. Other dragons. They had found 7 more Thraxians in the months since the battle. Some had been in hiding, like Seraphine. Others had been held captive by various groups across the galaxy. And human ships had liberated them after the Colonial Council officially recognized the Thraxians as sentient beings. 7 dragons, including Seraphine and Hana. Not many, but enough for hope. Morning report. Mira's voice came through Jiho's communicator. The AI now managed the entire sanctuary systems. We have 3 supply ships arriving today. Captain Salmon is among them, and she's brought someone who wants to meet you. Who? Jiho asked. She wouldn't say. Just said it was important. Jiho walked back toward the main complex, Hana following at his side like a massive, scaled companion. Deho was there, working on the environmental controls. The engineer had become the sanctuary's technical director, managing all the equipment that kept humans and dragons comfortable in the same space. Did you hear about the council meeting? Deho asked, when he saw Jiho. Which one? There are always council meetings now. The big one. They're voting today on the Sanctuary Protection Act. If it passes, this place becomes official human territory, and the Thraxians become formal allies of the human colonies. Jiho felt a surge of emotion. That's everything we've been working toward. It's also going to make the Krothic very angry, Deho pointed out. They've already filed 3 formal protests. On. Let them protest, Jiho said. We drew our line. We're not crossing back. Salmon's ship landed in the designated area, and Jiho went to meet her. The trader had become a regular visitor, using her network to supply the sanctuary and spread word of what the Thraxians represented. She had become something of a hero in certain circles, the captain who had rallied dozens of ships to stand against the Krothic. She emerged from her ship with her usual confident stride. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her came a man. Jiho recognized immediately. Marshal Kyungho. Marshal, Jiho said, surprised. I didn't know you were coming. Wanted to see the place for myself, Kyung-ho replied, looking around. They walked through the sanctuary, and Ji-ho showed them what had been built. The medical facilities where injured Thoraxians could be treated. The research center where scientists studied dragon biology and culture, learning from beings who had lived for centuries. The hatching chamber, built in hope for a future that now seemed possible. Seraphine joined them, with Hana and 2 other Thoraxians. Kyung-ho stopped walking, staring at the massive dragons, with the same awe that everyone felt on their first real encounter. They're magnificent, he said quietly. They're people, Ji-ho replied. That's what matters. Seraphine lowered her head toward Kyung-ho in a gesture of respect. Through the telepathic connection, she sent Ji-ho an image to share. She wants me to tell you thank you, Ji-ho translated, for standing with us when no one else would, for being willing to risk everything. I was just doing my job, Kyung-ho said. No, Ji-ho replied. You did more than your job. You did what was right, even when it was dangerous. They continued the tour, and Ji-ho explained what they had learned about the Thoraxians. They were an ancient species, one of the oldest in the galaxy. They had no interest in conquest or technology, preferring to live simply and raise their young with care. They could live for thousands of years, and their memories went back to times when humans were still confined to Earth. They have so much to teach us, Ji-ho said. If we had let the Krothic take them, all that knowledge, all that wisdom, would have been lost. And now, Kyung-ho asked, now we're learning. Together, they returned to the main complex, where a crowd had gathered. Humans and dragons, working side by side, preparing for the evening's celebration. Word had spread about the council vote, and everyone wanted to be there when the results came in. Jin Seo was there too. The former mercenary had stayed after the battle, working as security chief for the sanctuary. He was training a team of volunteers in defensive tactics, just in case the Krothic ever tried again. He nodded to Ji-ho as they passed. Strange world we're building, Jin Seo said. People change, Ji-ho replied. You did. Yeah, well, turned out I was tired of being the villain. As the sun set, everyone gathered in the central plaza. A large holographic display had been set up, showing the feed from the Colonial Council chamber. The vote was beginning. Ji-ho stood next to Seraphine and Hana, with Daeho on his other side. Around them, dozens of humans and 9 dragons watched in tense silence. The council representatives spoke one by one, stating their positions. Some were firmly in support, moved by the story of the sanctuary and the bravery shown during the battle. Others were cautious, worried about antagonizing the Krothic Dominion, but in the end, the vote wasn't even close. The Sanctuary Protection Act passed with overwhelming support. Cheers erupted across the plaza. Humans hugged each other, and dragons sang in their melodic voices, creating a harmony that sent chills down Ji-ho's spine. It was official now. The Thoraxians were protected. The sanctuary was real. They had won. Hana launched herself into the air, her joy too great to contain. Other young dragons followed her, and they danced in the sky above the sanctuary, their scales catching the last light of the setting suns. Seraphine pressed her massive head against Ji-ho's side, and through their connection, he felt her emotions. Gratitude, joy, relief, and something deeper. Love, not romantic love, but the love of family, of beings who had found each other across impossible odds. Thank you, her thoughts whispered in his mind. You saved us. You gave us a future. We gave each other a future, Ji-ho replied softly. Later that night, after the celebrations had died down, Ji-ho found himself back at the edge of the sanctuary. Kyung-ho joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. The council also voted to make you the official liaison between humans and Thoraxians, the marshal said, handing Ji-ho a cup. Congratulations. You're now Ambassador Ji-ho Park. I don't want a fancy title, Jiho protested. I just want to help them. You'll help them more with authority behind you, Kyung-ho said. Besides, you earned it. None of this happens without you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sanctuary's lights. Do you ever think about those colonists? Kyung-ho asked. The ones you couldn't save? Jiho was quiet for a moment. Every day, he admitted. But it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. I couldn't save them. That's still true. But I saved Hana. And through saving her, maybe I helped save an entire species. That has to count for something. I said. It counts for a lot, Kyung-ho assured him. Movement in the darkness caught their attention. A group of Thraxians were gathering near the hatching chamber. Curious, Jiho and Kyung-ho walked closer. Seraphine stood before a large egg, newly laid. It was opalescent, shimmering with inner light. Other dragons surrounded it, singing softly, their voices creating a protective lullaby. Is that? Kyung-ho started. New life, Jiho said, wonder in his voice. The first Thraxian egg laid in freedom in 5 years. Seraphine looked at them, and Jiho understood. This was hope made real. This was the future they had fought for. A baby dragon who would hatch in safety, grow in peace, and live without fear of hunters. Hana came to stand beside Jiho, and together they watched the dragons celebrate the new life. Through the telepathic bond, Jiho felt something he had never felt before. He felt connected to something larger than himself, part of a story that would be told for generations. A human who had refused to look away from suffering, a mother dragon who had chosen to trust, a child who had asked the question that started it all. The answer, Jiho thought, was yes. And in that trust, they had built something beautiful. Weeks later, Jiho sat in his office, writing a report for the Colonial Council. The egg had hatched the previous night, producing a healthy baby dragon with golden scales. The entire sanctuary had celebrated, and messages of congratulation had poured in from across human space. As he wrote, Hana entered through the large door they had installed for the dragons. She carried something in her claws, carefully, reverently. It was a small crystal flower, native to Tharos Prime. She placed it on Jiho's desk and sang a few soft notes. For me? Jiho asked. Hana nodded, then sang again. Jiho understood the meaning, translated through their bond, and 3 months of learning to communicate. You gave me life. This is gratitude. Jiho felt tears in his eyes. He reached out and placed his hand on Hana's nose, feeling the warmth of her scales. You gave me purpose, he said. We're even. Outside, the sanctuary thrived. Humans and dragons worked together, learning from each other, protecting each other. Ships came and went, bringing supplies and support from across the colonies. The Krathic made threats but took no action, deterred by the humans' willingness to stand and fight. And in the hatching chamber, the newest Thraxian slept peacefully, guarded by her mother, and watched over by a growing community of humans who had decided that some things were worth fighting for. Jiho returned to his report, but his heart was light. He had spent 2 years running from failure, hiding from the guilt of lives he couldn't save. But he had learned something important in the crystal forests of Tharos Prime. Sometimes you failed. Sometimes you couldn't save everyone. But that didn't mean you stopped trying. It didn't mean you turned away when someone needed help, because in the end, that was what being human meant. Not being perfect, not winning every battle, but never giving up on the fight to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Jiho looked at Hana, who had curled up in the corner of his office, content to simply be near him. He looked out the window at Seraphine, teaching the young dragons to fly. He thought about all the humans who had risked their lives to protect beings they had never met, and he smiled. This was home now. This sanctuary, built on trust and hope, and the stubborn human refusal to let injustice stand. This was his redemption, and it was only the beginning.